Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Gary Smith. Thanks for joining us for this topic of lead conversion and lead performance. We're going to be talking about how you use metrics and the lead conversion process to boost revenue. So I'm delighted to say, you probably heard us talking already. Delighted to say that I have two merry men on the phone to help me do that. We have Dan Bailey. You heard him talking just before as we were doing the introduction. Dan is one of our consultants. So thanks for joining me, Dan.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to the webinar today.
And we also have the illustriously named Ben Affleck Curry. So Ben Affleck Curry, if that really is your name, then you can introduce yourself now.
Hey, everyone. I'll be kind of handling questions and everything today. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, just drop a message in the chat, and I'll ask Gary and Dan at a convenient time.
Yeah, so you keep it straight, Ben, and Ben's done all the work in organising this. So thanks for your help, Ben, and I know it's quite a bit of work goes into it. So what are we going to talk about? Well, this is our agenda. These are the subjects. We're going to talk primarily about lead conversion metrics. We're going to look at a dashboard, and we're going to look at some real useful metrics about how you track the contribution of converted leads and how you look at the source, and really how you can improve lead conversion performance. But just before we do that, we'll talk a little bit about the process as well, the lead conversion process, because the biggest single reason that that people struggle to get metrics out of Salesforce on lead conversion is they have a broken conversion process. So we're going to point out the pitfalls on that. And if you have a broken lead conversion process, then you'll know how to fix that at the end of this webinar. And we are also announcing today we have a new GSP dashboard that will be going live today, and that will contain many of the charts, the real interesting charts that we'll go through today. So we'll talk about how you access that. So the key things really, that the key takeaways: how to avoid a broken lead process. So how to get the metric, how to get the right process to make sure you get the metrics, and we're going to look at some dashboards and generate some insight on lead metrics, and you will understand how to get your hands on that dashboard. So without further ado, let's talk about the lead process first of all. And let's just pick a lead at random. There's really three questions that people ask about the lead conversion process. The first is, when should we convert a lead? Second, who should convert the lead? And the third is, what should we create when a lead is converted? So the first of those, when should you convert a lead? Well, really, when the lead is sales ready, is when that person is ready to engage with the salesperson, when it's qualified. So in other words, however you want to define that in your business, is when that lead is ready to engage with you in some sales process. And the reason I use the word sales process is what should you create when the lead is converted? Generally speaking, I would recommend creating an account, a contact, and an opportunity when the lead is converted. And for reasons that I will just demonstrate now, I don't know whether you would concur with this, Dan, but I would generally advocate the inside sales. If you're looking to have an inside sales team or the marketing team, whoever is doing the qualification on those leads, that's the person that should do the converting. So let me just give you an example of what I mean. This lead, let me move the go to webinar out of the way, that's better. So this lead has a lead source. It's a lead source of web. It's linked to a specific, a couple of marketing campaigns actually. And people often, this lead source field here is a key field really for generating metrics. And one of the mistakes people often make is that they make that field way too detailed. Was really that field, that lead source field, it's a standard field. I would use that to define the kind of overall channel, the overall way that that lead came to you, whether it's web, whether it's a trade show, an expo, whether it's a partner referral or whatever. So use the lead source field to track the overall source, and use the campaign to tell you, well, which web form was it, or which trade show was it, or which partner campaign was it, and so on. So the lead source and the campaign are two key fields when it comes to generating metrics on converted leads. Now, let's just convert this lead. Let's just go ahead and do it. And we're going to create a new account, Abbott Insurance. And it's this little checkbox is often the problem here. Do not create new opportunity. I would only check that box if you're merging or you're converting a lead into an existing account and contact. So let's assume this is a brand new customer. We haven't a brand new prospect. We haven't engaged with them before. But let's create an opportunity as well. So I'll just convert that lead. Now, what often happens is if I just go to the opportunity, what you'll see is the campaigns have been pulled through onto. We said that, Dan. If you can just add the campaigns to the page layout, that would be handy. In fact, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Before I get too confused myself, let me just. Sorry, forget I said that. I'm getting ahead of myself. What you'll see is that this campaign has been pulled through into the primary campaign source, and the lead source from the lead has been pulled through into the opportunity as well. And the key message is really this: when you create the opportunity at the same time as converting the lead, then this information is pulled through, the marketing campaign itself updates, and we have a much more powerful way of generating robust metrics. What we see very often is that leads get converted, they get passed through to sales, but only an account and a contact is created. The opportunity is created later when the salesperson has qualified it, and at that point you're losing the linkage between the campaign and the lead source. So you're not pulling that information through from the lead, whereas if you convert the lead and create the opportunity, you're pulling through this information, and you're going to, as you'll see, you can get much more powerful metrics from that.
I think that's important for the marketing teams there as well, Gary. A lot of times that there's some friction between where the lead came from, where the sale came from originally. And when you maintain that information and you can associate it back to a lead source or a lead campaign, then at least the marketing team have a way of saying, this is the influence that we had upon this final sale. Yeah. This is what we did in order to get this sale. And that is something, when you talk about that friction between sales and marketing, that is something that marketing often lose, that visibility of generating that sale. So I think that's definitely important to remember at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think what happens in a lot of businesses is that the sales team said, well, we don't want to accept opportunities from marketing. We'll accept a lead, but we won't accept the opportunity. And that's a mistake, because if the opportunity is created later, you're using that linkage, the kind of linkage to marketing that we referred to as well. You were telling me also, Dan, just before we started, just about the prospecting stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important stage. So if a salesperson is reluctant to accept an opportunity having converted from a lead, I think prospecting is a good stage to use, because you can then be assured that it hasn't been converted or created at a later stage than that. You can use that prospecting stage as a kind of starting stage to start going around and doing your investigation as a salesperson, and you can be comfortable it's left in that stage, and then everyone's on board, they know what that stage is about. So I would certainly use prospecting as a stage when you are converting that opportunity in the first instance. So
creating an early stage, a very early stage in the sales process, and it's kind of no shame to close deals out of from that stage. But at least it recognises to the salespeople that it's very early in the sales process. But at least we do have the opportunity, and we do have those linkages as well.
Yeah, you'll notice on there as well, Gary, that we've got a couple of other fields set up. So we've got accepted by sales and time for sales to accept, and they're there just to give the business an how long it's taking for salespeople to acknowledge these opportunities as they come through. So first instance, you can you can have it accepted by sales, which would be a checkbox against the accepted by sales field. And then there's a time value there. And that helps build up some SLAs later on in the process to really understand how quickly people are coming to look at these opportunities from converted leads.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something we talk about all the time in the context of sales and marketing alignment, having some sort of SLA by which sales must follow up converted leads and opportunities and so on as well. Yeah, good. Okay, let's so that's the bit about the process. So the key thing really is create the opportunity when the lead is converted and not later. Let's go to the dashboard. So this is a marketing dashboard. This is a dashboard we will often implement for our customers. And let's start down at the bottom here, actually, because we put a lot of effort into generating these leads. We put a lot of effort into nurturing them and converting them and so on. But do they actually generate any revenue? What is the contribution of these converted leads? And this chart here tells us that. So it tells us the yes and no. So the yes relates to an opportunity that came from a converted lead, and the no means that the opportunity didn't come from a converted lead. It was linked. It was created on the account directly. So we can see the contribution of converted leads to the overall revenue. We can go and have a look at the underlying chart, and you can start to see that information. So it's telling us something interesting. It's telling us that converted leads are contributing to revenue in this business, in fact, just over a third. Now, what would you actually do with that information? It's interesting, but what would you do with it? Well, the dashboards and the charts are really, use all of these charts as a tool to dig into performance. They tell you where to ask questions and often what questions to ask, rather than necessarily giving you the total answer. What these charts do is allow you as managers, salespeople, administrators, support people, they allow you to dig in and start to ask questions in more detail. So, for example, I would say, well, okay, let's dig into this in a little bit more detail. Let's just do it by country in this case. You might want to segment this report. You might want to segment it by territory, by industry, by I don't know, type of customer or whatever. But we can just see here that there's variation between the different countries in terms of the contribution of converted leads. In fact, the UK is the lowest. So again, it's not telling me the answer. It's telling me where to go and look for the answers, and it's giving me guidance as an executive to go and start to dig into this in more detail. Do they have, I don't know, do they have a broken handoff process in the UK? Do we are we not generating many leads? Are we not dealing with those leads effectively? It really starts to help you to pin down those that analysis in more detail. Let's have a look at another one. Let's keep going down at the bottom here, actually. Go on, Ben.
Gary, can I just intervene quickly?
Yeah.
We had a question a few minutes ago about lead source. Wanted to know if you want to touch upon that.
Sure.
Someone said you have a limited field set in the example. Social and paid channels are missing, for example. Do you suggest to use the campaign-only form to identify it?
There's no particular reason why we excluded social channels on here. It's more the case that we're using a development environment of Salesforce. This is obviously dummy data. It's not a real customer data. So frankly, we haven't just added the social media channels. I would probably add social media as a pick list on the lead source and link specific campaigns. If you're doing a specific Facebook campaign, for example, I would create that as a campaign. But I would. That's probably, I don't know whether you have a view, Dan. It's probably an interesting point whether you create the lead source as social media or whether you'd create it as LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. There's no hard and fast rule really, but use campaigns in the context of the lead source as well. So, but what we often see is is companies, they have, rather than having trade show as a lead source, they'll have every trade show they ever attended. And then when you start to look at this information, for example, it's much harder to understand. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, no, I would just agree with that point. The lead source, in my opinion, should be the social channel. So whether that be Facebook or LinkedIn, and then specific campaigns that are run from those channels should be linked to the campaign object. Yeah. So that's how I would divvy it up. And you're right, there are too many people that consider a campaign to be a lead source. That is not the case. The way people use campaigns and their relation to lead sources, probably another webinar entirely. But yeah, that would be best practice in my mind.
Yeah, it is definitely another webinar. It's a different subject entirely. But if you, in relation to campaigns, if you only take one thing away from this discussion, it is do not hesitate to click on that button called Advanced Setup. It's a spectacularly badly named button on the campaign. It shouldn't be called Advanced Setup. It should be called Basic Setup, and it allows you to track the relationship between leads and contacts and individual campaigns. But we won't go into that too much. But have a look on our blog post on our website. There is plenty of advice on campaigns as well. Because it's an interesting question about lead source. I mean, this chart tells you the win rate of converted leads by lead source. So we can see that partner referrals, for example, have the highest win rate in terms of the number of converted leads. So by win rate, we mean of all of the deals closed within a certain period, in this case, current financial year, of all of the opportunities that were closed in the current financial year, what's the ratio between won and lost? And you can see there there's only for opportunities that came from converted leads. So you can see there that there's a difference in win rates, maybe as you'd expect. Partner referrals are higher, but they appear to be for lower value deals on the whole. So that's starting to give you some further insight into the performance of converted leads. It's not the entire picture. The chart to the left also gives it is a higher level view of that, really. The chart to the left, this one here, the one in the middle, looks at the win rate of converted leads versus opportunities directly created on the account. So you can see that for opportunities directly created on an account, overall the win rates are slightly higher. And I guess you'd expect that because many of those opportunities will relate to existing customers where all other things being equal, the win rate will be higher. But again, we can drill down to the underlying report and we could start to segment that report in whatever is meaningful for your business, whether that's geography, territory, and so on, and start to investigate that in more detail. Maybe all of that converted lead business is coming from one territory and not another. So we have that. We start to get that picture of the contribution of converted leads. And it's quite interesting that you can see the different performance by lead source there, and we have one underneath which tells us the win rate by campaign. So actually, looking at this, the tech seminar that we did, well, that's got a much higher win rate for leads that came from that campaign than anything else. Now, both of those charts, the lead source one and the campaign chart, require that linkage at the point of conversion, and that's why we were discussing that point up front. But again, we've got some insight into the conversion rate by campaign. Now, that's all very well, but so we understand the different conversion rates and so on, but a conversion rate of 90% or 100% or any other figure might be great, but what's the overall contribution of those lead sources and the campaigns? How do we put these numbers in context? So we know partner referrals got by far the highest win rate, but should we be focusing more on that? What's the overall contribution of those opportunities from that lead source versus web, for example? And Dan, you built this chart here. Do you want to comment on these two charts at the bottom?
Yeah, what we've got here is a good picture of all opportunities that have been created by their varying lead source or by their campaign, and we try to put as much information on these charts as possible, so you're able to get a kind of a more holistic view of what's happening from those lead sources or campaigns. So you can see that we've got the different forecast categories here, and I'll just run you through those quickly. Omitted in this case means closed lost. Pipeline means that it's still open, and closed would refer to closed won. So you're able to see on these charts a kind of a broader view of what's happening via lead source. So you can see, for example, that for the web as a lead source, strictly speaking, you're probably getting more closed opportunities this year than you are omitted, and that's interesting to know. And you can start to build up a picture there as to what lead source might be generating the best amount of opportunities, and where you are losing them, and where you are maintaining them. But then it also gives you a bit of a view as to what's open at the moment. So you might suggest that the trade show may have just happened because we've got several that are kind of still in the pipeline phase, and only a few have closed there. So it's a good kind of holistic view of what's happening for lead source and for campaigns.
And I think the key thing, Dan, is it puts context into these numbers. So it puts context it puts context into the win rate by lead source, and it puts context into the lead campaign. So on the one hand, it's telling us that, for example, the win rate from web leads is relatively low, but on the other hand, I see here that we are generating a lot of revenue from those. So it's not to say that one campaign or one lead source is better than another necessarily. What it's doing, what we're trying to do here, is really give you the information as executives trying to drive revenue performance in your business. It tells you where to start looking. Is there a reason why leads from the tech seminar are performed in terms of the win rate more effectively than others? We can see that actually it was a pretty successful campaign in terms of the overall business generated as well, and there's still quite a bit of open pipeline, whereas the software opportunity campaign, well, had a pretty low conversion rate, and we can see that reflected in the high value of omitted and the relatively small remaining pipeline and won deals there as well. So it's part of that overall picture and the overall story. The other two charts above that, I also think are interesting. The win rate by lead owner, let's just be clear what that's showing is it's showing who was the lead owner at the point of conversion. In other words, when it's not necessarily Nick and Tim that did the converting, they were the owner of the lead at the point of conversion. So we can't easily grasp the converter, but we know Nick and Tim were the lead owners. Now, I think this is useful in the context of an inside sales team, or if you have one or two people who are qualifying leads, so they're calling leads and trying to tee up appointments and so on. Do some people consistently outperform others in terms of the win rate? So in this case, Nick significantly outperforms in terms of the percentage win rate by count, but not so good in terms of the win rate by amount. So he would appear that quite a lot of his low value opportunities successfully come to conclusion. That's in terms of the win rate by lead owner. Now, again, how do we use that information? The chart and the underlying report by themselves do not give us the answer. They tell us where to start looking. Now, it might be that Nick and Tim are working on different products, different geographies, whatever it is, but let's assume that so all other things being equal, maybe Tim is doing a much more stringent job of qualifying some of the high quality leads, high value leads, and so on. So again, we don't know, but this tells us where to start looking. The chart to the left shows us win rate by opportunity owner. So these are the people that own the opportunities. So we're only talking about converted leads here, and these are the people to whom those leads have been converted and the opportunities have been given to, in this case, to Jeff and Lars. Again, we've got a different a difference in win rate there. Again, the sort of metrics that you referred to, Dan, in terms of it would be interesting to look at those metrics in terms of how quickly do they follow up leads? Does that explain some of the difference in conversion rate and so on?
Well, there's certainly a story to tell here, isn't there, Gary? And I think that's all important. You said it all along. It's a guide as to why these people may be performing in this way. And if you can start to put patterns together using this data, you can start to extrapolate those out and then look at the business as a whole. And you can start to see, well, maybe Jeff or Nick is doing something that other members of the team aren't doing. And that information is valuable. And you can go and you can interview those and you can start to talk about the process and then work that into your overall business process to maybe start work towards those better goals that these salespeople or lead owners are creating.
Absolutely. So they are the 6 or 7 charts that you see here. Contribution of converted leads, these win rates, this analysis that shows the performance and the win rates by converted leads. These are the charts that are on the GSP lead conversion dashboard that will be launched later on today. So we'll send everybody a link to that dashboard and you can go and download and install these charts yourself. We actually do it through 2 custom fields, one on the lead and one on the opportunity. So there's just a small bit of lead mapping that you need to do. We can't do that as part of the package, but we will. Anybody who downloads it will automatically fire them an email, tell you exactly how to map a field between the lead and the opportunity if you don't already know how to do that. Let's have a look at some of the.
That's nice and simple as well, Gary. Just to point that out, that's a very simple process, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Even I can do it.
We've actually got another question, guys, if you want to answer that now.
Yep.
Leads management and report. Do you suggest, when possible, to enter everything as a lead, even if they already exist as an account? Or add a campaign on existing accounts? For example, if you meet someone in the exhibition that is already registered to your Salesforce, is it more convenient to enter him as a lead and then merge it?
That's an interesting question, and I was about to say, no, in normal walk of life, I would just go straight to the account and create the opportunity directly on the account, and I would link it where appropriate to a campaign. The reason I slightly hesitated in saying that is because the last part of the question, Ben, about a trade show. Very often when you go to a trade show, the organisers give you a spreadsheet and it's got a list of all the people that you scanned or tagged or whatever at the trade show. And the easiest thing to do with those people is to import them as leads. You can't, there's no obvious way to import them. You can't deduplicate unless you've got certain tools. You can't deduplicate them and create them as leads or contacts. Really, you need to create them more as leads. There are tools you can use to, if you have a lot of leads, you can use a variety of tools to kind of automatically merge those leads into existing accounts and contacts. But in that situation, if it's an existing customer, I would probably create them as a lead, probably through the spreadsheet import, and I would click on that button, find duplicates, and I would look for, let me just do it. I would look for any matching existing customers. So it's this button here, and that will find any existing, find Bertha or an existing company, and I would convert them into that account. That will link them back to the originating campaign. So it will create the contact link to the campaign, and you can choose to update the campaign status. So attended, for example, in relation to the campaign. And that's the mistake most people make with campaigns. They don't modify these settings here. So create attended, non-attended, no show. So if it's a trade show, you might have those values as opposed to the default values of sent and responded. So modify those values. Is there anything to add to that, Dan? Have we lost Dan?
No, I'm here. Sorry, just as you kind of said earlier, I'd like to reiterate the point around that advanced setup button. Many people miss that, don't they, when they're setting up a campaign? I don't know if you can just go back and show that again, Gary, because that's the key one, especially around, just understanding how people respond to your campaigns. You need to set up these values correctly here, and many people don't go in because of it saying advanced setup.
Yeah.
If you don't go in and adjust those values, then you're never going to be able to kind of gain the insight that you should be able to gain from campaigns in Salesforce. Often it is left as sent and responded, and unless, for example, in this case, you're at a trade show, you wouldn't have sent and responded as something that is relevant to a trade show. You would need it to say attended, not attended, no show. So it's important that people remember that, particularly around campaigns.
Yeah, and in fact, Dan, I would never have one of these values as responded, even though there is a standard value there populated for you of responded. I would never have that as responded, because it gets extremely confusing with this set of checkboxes here, or this responded value here. As you said, Dan, it's a topic in its own right. So let's not get too bogged down in that. But you're absolutely right.
And you will actually see the difference on one of our charts coming up between a responded checkbox that actually exists already and a responded value. So it's important not to duplicate those, and you'll see that on one of our charts that we'll show shortly.
Yeah. So let's have a look at one or two of the other charts on here. We looked at those charts at the bottom that shows performance by lead source. Very simple to create dashboard charts that give you more analysis on that. So closed won deals. We've done all of these this financial year. Set it to whatever value is appropriate to you this quarter or this financial year or whatever it is. That shows you the contribution of opportunities from converted leads by lead source. We can see that we also have quite a bit of pipeline by different campaigns as well. We can see the stage of each of those opportunities. And the lost value shows, well, we've got one, we've got pipeline, we've got lost as well. So again, it gives us a little bit more context. We could drill down into that and say, well, actually, who was losing most of those deals? Again, do they come from a particular area and so on? We can go into this and say, well, where are most of the pipeline opportunities? Same thing by campaign. So campaigns with open opportunities, one opportunities. In fact, Dan, what we'll do just before the next webinar is we'll just swap these round, actually, because we could just keep them one open and lost. And also average deal by campaign as well, because we've got some metrics there on the contribution of converted leads, but how do those leads look in terms of average deal size? And this is, again, the sort of thing that will tell you that.
That's a good one, that I think, Gary, because it shows where you may want to focus your marketing efforts going forward. So you can see that the tech seminar there really brought in some business. So next year, if there's another tech seminar, you might want to focus on that one again, as opposed to looking at, say, a software opportunity or a nurture campaign, because you can tell it's brought in the big bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll look one to us, because I'm conscious that we've only got 5 minutes or so left. But open leads by lead owner, interesting, particularly if you've got a team, again, within some sort of inside sales team, or some people doing some work on qualification. Again, look at how many deals everybody's got by what's the distribution of workload. We looked earlier at the number of leads that get converted and what happens to those leads, but what is the current work in progress? The chart in the middle shows the leads created by month, and it's showing it in this case by lead source. It's also quite interesting to show it by lead status as well, because in this one we've got quite a good spread of leads, but you might say, well, actually, what on earth happened to our partner referrals in October? For example, we've got a pretty healthy contribution from partners in the other months. But again, looking at the number of leads created and looking at the leads by lead source partly tells you, well, are we firing on all cylinders from each lead source? But also, where you see a downward trend, then we might be storing up a problem for ourselves in a few months' time in terms of pipeline size and leads and warm opportunities that we can give the sales team. Equally, if we've got an upward trend, that generally would be good, but we also would want to track the ongoing conversion rates as well to understand how those leads pan out. Are we just collecting numbers rather than good quality leads? Generally speaking, the better. I've seen time and time again, companies generate more revenue by focusing on good quality leads and by lead nurturing rather than the sheer volume of leads. And these charts also, we won't reiterate it, but again, campaigns. What's the performance of different campaigns by lead member status? And that's exactly the thing that Dan was talking about. How are these campaigns performing in terms of the relationship? So we can see that the nurture campaign has got the most number of people associated with it, but it's also got the most number of people where the status is not sent, for example. It's also got a lot of people where they are engaged. So use that campaign member status to generate lead conversion metrics. But I'd just like to touch on that other question I can see as well. It's quite an interesting one. We wrote quite a popular blog post the week before last. It was about sales and marketing alignment, and it was about we talked at some considerable length about the fact that salespeople complain that the leads they get from marketing are rubbish, and marketing complain that salespeople never phone up the leads that we do give you. And we wrote quite a lengthy blog post on that subject. And one of the recommendations is to make sure that you have a robust closed feedback loop, and a robust feedback loop in two ways. One is quantitative, and that's what we are largely talking about here. Getting good quality metrics on what happens to converted leads. And the other aspect of that recommendation, that's what the question is about qualitative feedback as well. How do you get qualitative feedback from sales that you can use as part of an ongoing marginal gain improvement in the quality of leads? In other words, how can we learn what happens? Because at these charts at the bottom of the dashboard talk very much about win rate and so on, but how do we get feedback, particularly from opportunities that were lost? How do we get feedback from salespeople that we can share with marketing or share with inside sales, that we can use that feedback to improve? The best way to do it, we had a conversation about this the other day, Dan, about whether we would create an individual field or whether we would use chatter on opportunities. My personal view is it's best to use the chatter feed, use this, create a topic or create a group, and insist that in every case, when an opportunity from a converted lead is won or it's lost, get feedback from the salespeople. Why was it a good lead? What was good about it? Why? What was the what was the conversation with the prospect? If it wasn't a good lead, again, get that qualitative feedback as well. So we've got quantitative feedback on the dashboards, but get qualitative feedback as well. Anything else to say about that, Dan? We had quite a lengthy conversation about it the other day.
Yeah, well, I disagree with you there, Gary, and I would prefer to see it as a field that you could enter and validate that it was completed. But both work out. I think the overall takeaway from that is that you should get that feedback, because that feedback is really important going forward.
Absolutely. So I don't know if there are any more questions. That was an interesting question, Ben. I could see there. I think we are just about up to our time limit now. We will email everybody later today with a link to the dashboard that you can download and you can install in your own environment. It will be called the GSP Lead Dashboard, and it will contain these charts towards the bottom of the dashboard that have the conversion rates and so on. So feel free to go ahead and install that dashboard, and we will drop you an email just to make 100% sure that you understand what to do with it as well. And if in doubt, If you want to talk to us about lead conversion in general, just go to our website. You will hopefully know what it is. It's garysmithpartnership.com. Go to our website. There's a phone number, or get in touch with us via the form, and we will help you sort it out. We will give you a hand to do that. So, Dan and Ben, thank you very much indeed for your help. Anybody got any further questions? Then we will drop me a line afterwards, and we will do our best to help you. So thanks very much, everybody. Speak to you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.